Andrew, thanks for joining us this afternoon.
Hey, Mark, thanks for having me.
It's great to have you here. Can you talk a little bit about how life has changed for you personally?
Yeah, it's pretty wild. The organization pivoted about 4 weeks ago to a virtual office, like many in our community and across the country. I am the sole occupier of the literary arts office this last 4 weeks, so I bicycle in every morning through the quiet streets of Portland. I could practically take I-5 here if I wanted to on my bike. Um, and then come and work on the office here and mind the server, which is now the beating heart of the organization, and open the mail and things like that. And it's a strange experience to be here. An office is normally super bustling from 8 o'clock in the morning to 10 o'clock at night, to be in a quiet office. And we're working long hours, of course, like everybody else, and so spend a lot of time here.
It seems to me that your organization, like so many cultural organizations in Portland, there's sort of a short-term challenge, a midterm challenge, and then a long-term challenge. The short-term challenge is you do put on a bunch of events.
Right.
And I'm sure anything you're doing in May and June is canceled, but I'm talking to people today who think there won't be events for the balance of the year. So the Portland Book Festival is on my mind. That's scheduled for the fall.
Yep.
What's your gut tell you?
Well, I mean, two things. I think it's really important to base decisions on information that you actually have. And what we don't know about the fall is whether we can have events or not. That's not clear to anybody. I think likewise, like I'm not going to stick my head in the sand and pretend like it's never going to happen. So, I mean, I would say the two things about that. One is, I think part of our job in the arts and culture space is to point to a place in the horizon that's hopeful and optimistic. And that's what we intend to do. So like, we went on sale to our subscribers for Portland Arts and Lectures like today. The mail dropped, and we've said to them, look, we've got 2 of those events scheduled in the fall for the concert hall. If for any reason we can't host those events in the fall, we will reschedule those events for the winter or the spring. So you are going to get to see these writers, whether or not the date stamped on your ticket ends up being the right date. And we can't know that. And so, we're really committed to like one foot in front of the other here a little bit. And not getting paralyzed by speculation. Likewise, we're still inviting people to the Portland Book Festival. People are still saying yes. And look, we get closer to the fall, we're going to make a decision based on science and based on health that's right for the community and right for our artists. But for now, let's think about what a festival would look like and think and celebrate that idea as a place to point to in the horizon.
But the longer term concern, it seems to me, for an organization like yours, and frankly, for any cultural organization in Oregon, is the long-term funding. Because whether I can go to a movie theater in a month or not, it's pretty clear that we are in for an economic downturn that is going to probably surpass that of 2008.
Right.
People are going to have less money. Corporations are going to have less money. Wealthy people who oftentimes donate to cultural organizations are going to have less money. Governments who provide diminishing support, but still some support, are going to have less money. And in a state like Oregon, where the last time I looked, I think state support for the arts, weren't we right ahead of Guam or something? I mean, it's really bad.
Yeah.
What does that bode for cultural institutions in Portland and Oregon? And obviously, I'm not just talking about your organization, anything from the art museum to the symphony to the ballet.
Yep. Sure. I mean, it's going to be hugely challenging. And again, you'd have to be a fool not to think that, we're not in some moment that's just going to snap back to where it was 2 months ago, and it's going to be really challenging. I think, again, like, I don't know what that's going to be like exactly. And I can't really control a lot of that. But what I can do, and what we're trying to do, and what we try to do every day, but we're really focused on now, is be relevant and be here for the community, be of service and be useful. And I think that I really believe, and I don't think this is naive, we focus on that, then we're going to figure out how to fund this organization. And it may look really different. I don't know that. It's too hard, to see what the ecology is going to look like at that point, financially, corporate, whatever it is. But what we have to focus on, and what we're really just trying to, is try to be here, be of service, be relevant, I do believe that relevant organizations can find a path forward. I'm not saying it's going to be easy or straight line. It's not. And we're all going to be working real hard over the next 6, 12, 18, 24 months. I mean, but I think we need to focus on that and not focus necessarily on exactly how we're going to be funded 2 years from now.
But do you think it's fair to say there are going to be some cultural institutions that won't be around a year from now?
Well, I mean, if you listen to some of the predictions from national organizations, national funders, some believe that as much as 50% of all the arts institutions in the United States are going to be bankrupt in the next 6 months. I don't know if that's true. I don't have access to that data, but whatever happens, we are going to find ourselves in a totally new art ecology. And the structural framework for supporting the production of art is going to change, right? That is just a reality. And so we are here, Literary Arts and other organizations, because we support the production in one way or another of art. We are the medium through which artists reach their audiences in different ways. That's going to be reduced, and it's going to be a problem for all of us. But it's hard to say how that's going to play out. It's a little bit difficult to see. And that's where I always just go back to this question that we're asking ourselves every day, the staff's asking themselves every day, is how are you relevant right now?
And how is Literary Arts trying to stay most relevant right now?
Well, I mean, just to speak to the power of the art form that we, are immersed in every day. I mean, literature has been here for thousands of years. It's going to be here for another thousands, many more thousands of years. It's been here in every pandemic and every crisis and every war. Books were dragged along with soldiers, and they were dragged along through pandemics. And there's a reason why people keep them so close to them. So our job is to help people find the books that are a distraction, are solace, are help them unpack and understand what's happening to them. Our job is to support the writers in this community and across Oregon who are making really important work and making sure it finds an audience. Our job is to point to places of contemplation through literature that help us understand who we are and help people figure out how to express themselves. I mean, it's interesting that the writing classes that we do, and the events that are for writers are really full right now. People are interested in trying to figure out how to deal with it. And writing is a great medium for understanding who you are and where you are in the universe. It always has been. So, when I mean relevant, I'm like, okay, so we can't have a class in a physical room. The room I'm sitting in right now used to have many, many, many classes in it every night of the week. But we can still do that work. It's just going to have to take a different form.
Well, so perfect segue. You traffic in the written word, and books have forever been a source of comfort as well as a window into trying to understand a world that oftentimes seems not understandable. Before, I talked to you this afternoon, I wrote staff and I asked who at Willamette Week, who's reading a book and what are you reading? And tried to see if they're reading for diversion or if they're reading for meaning. And of course, people said everything from the plague to Dune to the fall of the Roman Empire. And so, I don't think there's a theme, but I'm wondering if you've got any recommendations for our readers and viewers on books that you think might either have some meaning at this moment or provide a necessary distraction.
Well, so you asked me this, so I just wrote down 4, if that's not too many. I think people should be reading Omar El-Akkad's book, American War, which is about a civil war that takes place in the United States. The civil war is over fossil fuel. But
and Omar is a Portlander.
Omar's a Portlander for sure. Ursula K. Le Guin, who was involved in the founding of this organization 35 years ago, who is fundamental to Oregon literature, to national literature, to international literature. Almost anything that she's written is relevant right now. She could see the future, it felt like, in ways that none of us really understood when she was doing it. The Wizard of Earthsea is a great book for distraction. The Left Hand of Darkness is a great book for getting really serious and thinking about the situation we find ourselves in. Flipping it over that to go to a different kind of classic, I've been thinking a lot about The Great Gatsby right now. And the way in which
why do you think people should read that?
Of money and power. Well, I just think about money and power and the Depression and the Roaring '20s and kind of the boom that we've come through and the bust we're finding ourselves kind of dissembled into. It's one of my favorite novels. It's a masterly piece of fiction without being difficult to read. And then for a new book, I really loved Ben Lerner's book, The Topeka School, which just came out, a couple months ago, which is an astonishing book about language and about particularly the language of political discourse that we find ourselves in now, and the language of a civil conversation or civic conversation that we find ourselves in, and how we got to a place where some of our politicians seem incapable of stringing more than a sentence together of any kind. And I actually, in the middle of that book, I actually went I had to take a deep breath because it has a really amazing twist in it that I think is brilliant. And he's a really great writer. And again, none of these books are highfalutin or hard to read or overly literary. These are great works of literature.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks, Mark.